Hi, welcome back. So here what we will discuss about is the disk, different type of disk which is available in Azure. So this is, if you can see this diagram, this is I've taken from Azure documentation. So there are mainly three main disk types which is there in the Azure. One is the disk, data disk. The second is the OS disk, and the third is the temporary disk. Now, OS disk, this which is very simple. You have a OS, so so if you have your Windows OS, it will go on the OS disk, and this OS disk will not have any specific application data. For that, we have a different disk. So now OS disk will have a specific operating system. So if I take an example of Windows, it will have a Windows operating system, and this is persistent. So what it means persistent is like it will hold the data. So even if you restart your VM machine, or even if you deallocate and then again allocate back, your data will be persistent in that disk. So this is your first disk, which is the OS disk. Now second is the temporary disk, which is the drive D or any other name you can give, which is local and present to that VM, and which is not persistent. So what I mean, what exactly here it means by not persistent is the data if you store on this disk, it will be there as long as the VM is up and running. So if the VM is not up and running, if you restart the VM or if you deallocate and again allocate back, you will lose the data. So you have to be very careful when you save any file or any specific data or any log file, data file on this disk. There are very high chances, but not high chances. Definitely, if you restart the VM, it will go and it will lose the data. So we will see in the hands-on, or I've already made a hands-on on this. If you try to store any of this any of the file on this disk, and if you restart the VM, you will lose that file. We will also see the hands-on when we try to look more into a data disk and the OS disk. We will try to see if we can put some files here, and we will restart, deallocate and allocate back. So we will see the files are basically lost when you store on the D drive or the temporary disk. Now the last one is the data disk. Now the data disk is something which is you can give any name to it. So for example, say you can give E drive, F drive, K drive, any drive name which you need. And this data disk is something which it is again a persistent disk. So any application data, application log which you store on this disk, this will be persistent. So what I mean by persistent again is when you restart your VM or you allocate, deallocate, it will not lose the data. Okay, so now let's go back to the Azure document, and let's see more details about this disk. So I am on the Azure documentation. So let's see what exactly Azure says here. So data disk, as I said here, data disk is something which is used to store your application data or the other data you need to keep here. And the OS disk, as the name indicates, you have the operating system on this disk. And the third is a temporary disk, which is not a managed disk, and this is something which if you store anything here, this is basically a short-term storage for application in the process. And the moment you restart your VM, you will lose all those data. So these are three types of disk. Now what we will talk about is the different types of data disk which is available to us. So let's again go back to the Azure documentation. So here now I have a different types of disk which is available for me. So one is the ultra disk, one is the premium SSD, standard SSD, and the standard HDD. Now as we all know, SSD is basically solid state drive, and HDD is basically hard drive. Now what is the difference, which is very clearly mentioned here? Ultra disk is basically first of all, ultra disk, if you see here, ultra disk is used only for data disk. So now if someone says, okay, if I want to make ultra disk as an OS disk, you cannot use that. And second is we recommend using the premium SSD as the OS disk. So we will see the hands-on here exactly what it means by data disk and the SSD for the OS disk when we create the VM and when we assign the OS disk and when we assign the ultra disk. So bear with me here. I'm just trying to first clear and clarify what exactly the disks are available and where we can use, what is the use case for all the disks, all those disks, and then finally we will go and try to assign one of the disk in the VM and see how exactly it works. So now if you see this table here, this table clearly mentions the difference between the ultra disk, the premium disk, and the different types of disk which is available here. So now in the ultra disk, if you see, the disk size is very high, which is like you can say like 65 terabytes, and premium disk, the capacity is again less than ultra disk, and similarly the standard SSD and the standard HDD. And if you see the throughput is basically very high for ultra disk, and even the IOPS is very high as compared to the other disk which is available here. So this is in short about the disk which is available in Azure. So let me summarize here. So you have three different types of disk. One is the OS disk, and the second is the Yes, the OS disk, your temporary disk, and your data disk. And again, you have a different options available here. So the options available here is the ultra disk, the premium disk, and the going forward all the disk which is available here. So just point to remember here, one point to remember here is ultra disk cannot be used for the OS perspective, but it can be used for the data disk. And also ultra disk is not available in all the regions. It is very specific. It is available in very specific regions. So let's go down and see. Yeah, if you see here. If a region in the following list has no ultra disk capability available zone, the VM in that region must be deployed. Okay, so now here it says, okay, now the only infrastructure redundancy VMs available here. So these are the regions. So basically what it means to say, these are the regions where you can go and select your ultra disk. So ultra disk is not available in all the regions. So documentation is clearly mentioned here. So these specific regions where you can go, and if you see here, not every VM size is available also in every support region with the ultra disk. So your VM size, your region, everything matters to go and assign the ultra disk to the specific VM. So this is what we have to remember here. So takeaway points from here is ultra disk is something which is used only for the data disk, and it is used only for a specific region and a specific VM size. So for example, say if I say I need a VM which is a spot VM, so you cannot have ultra disk for a spot VM, something of this kind. So we have to go through this and understand, okay, what exactly which VM. So the entire diagram, the entire details has been given here on the documentation. But the key point to remember here is if someone asks us, okay, what exactly the ultra disk is used for, ultra disk is basically used for the data disk, and it is available in a specific region for a specific VM type. So this is what we have to remember from exam perspective also, and this would be helpful if you go and use if you try to solve any of the use case here. So hopefully this was useful, and in the next lecture, in the next lab, I will try to cover the hands-on how exactly you can connect this ultra disk for your data disk for your data disk, and your the premium disk for your OS, and how we can assign it, and how we can use, or how we can format this ultra disk into and assign a name to it. So we will see in the next lab, and hopefully this was useful for you guys. Thanks for watching.